Hello and welcome back to Principles of Macroeconomics. I'm your host, Dr. B, and we are going to talk about the interdependence and gains from trade. The idea of trade is that two or more countries, are engaging with trading of goods and services between each other. That is what trade is. Nations choose to be economically interdependent. What does that mean? Interdependence means that we rely on a trading partner, another country, for various things. For example, in the United States, we rely very heavily on China for rare earth minerals. Rare earth minerals are what goes into computer chips. In the year 2021, there is a computer chip shortage as a result of the pandemic. The pandemic caused people to not work. When people don't work, things don't get produced. An example of that is computer chips. There is currently a major shortage of computer chips. The United States is almost 100% reliant on China to produce the rare earth minerals that manufacture computer chips, which is why the cost of everything with a computer chip increased dramatically during the year 2021. I could go on and on. There's so many examples of this. The United States relies very heavily on the nation of Vietnam to produce furniture. Vietnam produces most of the world's furniture. The reason being is because they have direct access to the raw materials and low labor costs. And so much of the planet is reliant on Vietnam for manufacturing furniture. Sugar cane. Most countries around the equator that are tropical harvest sugar cane. Sugar cane comes from a few countries, and it only comes from those countries because the climate is conducive for being able to grow it. Coffee beans comes from very few countries around the equator, typically. In the United States, only Hawaii grows coffee beans. Other than that, most of our coffee beans come from other countries. So we are interdependent on other countries for coffee beans. So forth and so on. You see where we're going with that. It's called economic interdependence. Interdependence. Interdependence means we rely on someone else. How do we make trade better off? Well, we reduce cost. When we reduce cost, everyone benefits economically. What is an absolute advantage? When one trading partner has an advantage over the other. What is a comparative advantage? When there is a trade-off between two. And so let's talk about all of these things. You know, interdependence. We rely on someone else to get something done. Okay, hair gel from Cleveland, Ohio. Probably in Cleveland, Ohio, they make the most hair gel out of anyone in the world. So most cell phones come from Taiwan. Well, Taiwan and Korea, I would say. Cell phones. Dress shirts come from China, mostly. Yes, it's true. Uh, Actually, Indonesia is more of a larger country now for manufacturing dress shirts. Coffee from Kenya, absolutely. That's actually one of their biggest exports. And fast runners, of course, for those of you who watch the Olympics. Okay, so that's interdependence. Some countries are a lot better at manufacturing than others. And some countries only have resources in one place. So therefore, there's an interdependence. We become reliant on someone else. China and the United States, huge classic example. I give the example of raw earth minerals for manufacturing computer chips. A lot of things are done more advantageously in China because they do not pay their workers well, so the labor costs are very low. They do a lot of unethical things too, so that's not to say that they're ethical, but you can manufacture a lot less expensive in China. There's a lot less cost associated with manufacturing in China. Example of two other manufacturing countries, the United States and Japan. United States, we have plenty of wheat fields in the Midwest. Japan, experts at manufacturing, I think computers and other electronic devices. Resources involved. There's a labor. Labor is measured in hours. It's the same for both countries. But you know, we trade with between the U.S. and Japan for computers and wheat. You know, we give them wheat, they give us computers. It's, you know, that's a trade example, right? How much both goods each country produces and consumes is one of the major factors of trade. If one country chooses to be self-sufficient, that means that that country is not going to trade because they're making everything there and they're self-sustaining. In other words, if I produce wheat in the United States, I'm only going to sell it in the United States. That's self-sufficient. Interdependence means that I need to I'm relying on Japan to make computers to sell to the United States. So looking at our example, if the United States has 50,000 labor hours available for production per month, we can produce 100 computer hours, 100 hours of labor for one computer. We could do 1 ton of wheat every 10 hours of labor. Same exact example from the last chapter. And as you recall, there's a slope, which is the maximum production or maximum efficiency line. And this slope represents the PPF. So let's say that the United States uses half the labor to produce each of the two goods. So I have 50,000 hours. I'm going to dedicate half of that to wheat, half to computers, so 25,000 each. That is right in the middle. Okay, that is the point of the middle or equilibrium. In Japan, they have 30,000 labor hours available for production per month. They require 125 hours per computer and 25 hours per ton of wheat. So, of course, their graph is going to look a little bit different than ours, but this is Japan. And so we can see that in Japan, their slope is less with respect to the level of output for wheat and a little bit less for computer because of the number of hours required for each computer and for each ton of wheat. But that also means that their opportunity cost will be lower because their slope is not as sharp as it is in the United States. And so for their central point, if they dedicate half labor to each, they can produce about 800 tons of wheat and 125 computers, 120. So without trade, the U.S. consumers would only get 250 computers and 2,500 tons of wheat. And Japanese consumers would get 120 computers and 600 tons of wheat. That's without trade. In other words, the two countries aren't trading with each other for wheat or computers, right? But to compare the two without trade, we would compare that based off of the level of consumption. How much are consumers purchasing in each country without trading versus consumption with trade. If the two countries are trading with each other, we can see we can compare the two based off of the levels of consumption. Let's suppose the United States produces 3,400 tons of wheat. How many computers would the U.S. be able to produce with the remaining labor? And on the other side, let's suppose Japan produces 240 computers. What would they do with the remaining labor? Well, in the U.S., if we only produce 3,500 tons of wheat, that means we would have capacity to produce 150 computers, 160 computers, sorry. In Japan, if they produce the 240 computers, they would be able to produce 0 tons of wheat. So the two countries would trade with each other if that were the case. Imports and exports, let's talk about them. Imports means we are purchasing our goods and services abroad from another country and importing them to our country to be sold domestically. In other words, another country manufactured the product. The United States is going to buy the product from that country and then sell it within the United States. That's an import. An export, which it is when in the United States we've produced enough product to sell to other countries. That's an export to the United States. Import, good coming in. Export, good going out. Import, export. So let's say the U.S. exports 700 tons of wheat and imports 110 computers from Japan. How much would be consumed in the United States and how much would be consumed in Japan? So the United States produced 160 computers, we imported another 110. The United States produced 3,400 tons of wheat, we exported 700. So that means the amount that the United States consumed of each, we consumed 270 computers and 2,700 tons of wheat. In Japan, they produced 240 computers, 0 tons of wheat. They imported 700 from the United States. They exported 110 computers to the United States. That tells us that the amount of computers consumed in Japan was 130, and the amount of wheat consumed was 700. Now you see, and I can already hear you, Dr. B, that's above the maximum production. Well, yeah, because in order to obtain above the capacity, in order to attain above capacity or above maximum efficiency, we need to import. So in other words, if I can't make enough computers here, I'm going to import the rest. I'm going to get it from somewhere else. And so that's what this chart shows us. The gain from the trade is the U.S. gained 20 computers and gained 200. In Japan, they gained 10 computers, gained 100 wheat. So what happens when there's an absolute advantage of trade, especially in our example? The ability to produce a good using fewer inputs than another producer, that is an absolute advantage. The U.S. has an absolute advantage in wheat because the United States dedicates enough production to produce wheat, whereas Japan produced next to nothing. The U.S. has an absolute advantage in computers when producing the computer requires 125 hours in Japan, but only 100 in the United States. In other words, with respect to absolute advantage, the lower cost per unit represents an absolute advantage. When there's a lower cost per unit, the advantage goes to the lower cost per unit. So U.S. has an advantage for both goods because the cost point of manufacturing is lower for computers, and the export of wheat is sufficient because the other country cannot produce the wheat. But both countries gain from trade. Absolute advantage measures the cost of the good in terms of the output required for the producer. So absolute advantage, think cost. Lower cost point, absolute advantage. Lower cost point, absolute advantage. Opportunity cost. opportunity cost, as you know, is the foregone cost. That's what opportunity cost means. Comparative advantage. When we compare the two, it's the ability to produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than the producer. Now, in comparative advantage, we look at each good and whether or not it should be produced by the individuals of a similar opportunity cost. But this also represents specialization, right? So with opportunity cost, Japan is an expert at manufacturing computers. That's what they're really good at. But the United States is an expert at manufacturing wheat. That's what they're really good at. So you can say that Japan has a comparative advantage in manufacturing computers because they can't get it in wheat, right? That's what we're comparing it to. So gains from trade. When there's a comparative advantage, there's a difference in opportunity cost. That is a gain from the trade. The difference is the gain, right? The difference in opportunity cost is the gain. When there's a specialization, it's a comparative advantage where total production in all countries is high. Think of it like as a percentage for each country. What about other countries? So let's compare Argentina and Brazil. Argentina has 10,000 labor hours per month. They produce 1 pound of coffee. It requires 2 hours per pound of coffee, and each bottle of wine requires 4 hours. In Brazil, they can produce 1 pound of coffee for only 1 hour of time, and a bottle of wine only requires 5 hours. So, this one's pretty obvious, right? Argentina has an absolute advantage when it comes to producing wine, and Brazil has an absolute advantage when it comes to producing coffee. And with respect to wine, looking at a comparative advantage, Argentina would be the clear one. And again, a lot of it has to do with who can make it for the lowest price, right? That's the idea. It's the idea between the comparative advantage. And so the opportunity cost per bottle of wine is 5 pounds of coffee. It's the difference between the two, right? Okay. So in summation, interdependence in trade is desirable when both countries win. What that means is that they're both getting an advantage. One is receiving goods at a lower price point. The other one is receiving the opportunity cost. With comparative advantage, being able to produce a good at a lower price point represents a lower opportunity cost. Absolute advantage is being able to produce a good with fewer inputs. In other words, less number of hours, total less cost. That's absolute advantage. And of course, the gains from trade are based off of comparative advantage, not absolute. The whole idea behind trade is that everyone's better off because of trade. We have countries that specialize in certain products. We have countries that are reliant on other countries for certain products. But all in all, as the world continues to trade with each other, everyone will be better off from that trade. And of course, economics, from the general sense, have principles of comparative advantage to advocate for free trade among countries. The idea of free trade means that there are no tariffs involved. Okay, that is the conclusion of the third chapter. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns from anyone that is still on the call? Are you all okay? You're still with me, right? I mean, I know it's dinner time.
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay.
I say yes.
Right on. Fantastic. Well, I'm so happy. Um, I hope that these sessions are helpful. I hope that that makes sense to everyone. I mean, yeah, it's only this is our third chapter out of 23, so we still have 20 more to go. We have we have about 14 weeks after this week. So what does that mean? Usually, the way the course is designed, we'll have one chapter and then two chapters, one and then two, one and then two, until we cover 23. We're still really early on, so what you're getting right now is the foundation. We're building the foundation, and then in the future we'll jump into more. We'll have a lot more examples, a lot more math. Um, but my promise to you is I'll keep bringing real world examples. We'll make everything relatable to present day instead of 5 years ago, and we'll have fun with it along the way. So, so please, for this coming Sunday, what you have to do is you got to read through chapters 2 and 3. You got uh, the two recordings, which includes this one, the PowerPoint presentations, the book, and you need to complete homework for chapter 2 and for chapter 3 due this Sunday night. My recommendation is try to complete the chapter 2 homework by, let's say, Thursday, and then chapter 3 by Sunday. Try your best to be in the classroom about 3 to 4 days a week, and that should get you through everything with a good amount of time. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. Please don't wait till Sunday night to do all this stuff. Do it early on. Save yourself a headache. Okay? Um, if you ever have any questions, comments, concerns, you ever need help understanding a concept or whatever it is, you have my phone number, my email address. You can set up office hours with me. Um, whatever it takes, I'm here for you 100% of the time. So please take that and know that I'm here for you. Okay, I'm here for your success. I really am, and I want to help you to best understand economics. I know that none of you, most of you are probably not economics majors. So, but it's important that we kind of understand how the world works with respect to economics, especially when you get into business here. Okay, so with that, thank you all so very much for your time today. I sincerely appreciate all of you. And as always, as I like to say, stay safe, wash your hands, do the right thing. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you so much.